A haunting experience today. It was an incident that happened during the new year. At that time, the storyteller was taking their family on a trip back home to the countryside. However, during the journey, the navigation app on their phone led them through a shortcut. What awaited them on that shortcut was a series of terrifying encounters throughout the entire route. It's an experience that can only be described as chilling. This story is titled New Year Trip. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. The entire incident took place around 2018. At that time, Tom's girlfriend and her mother wanted to visit her grandmother in Calasan province. Tom agreed and planned the date and time with his girlfriend to take a trip to her grandmother's house during the New Year holidays. On that trip, there were 5 people traveling together: Tom, his girlfriend, their child, the girlfriend's mother, Tom's mother-in-law, and one of her mother's friends. However, the mother-in-law's friend was only tagging along to get dropped off in another province. They agreed to set out on their journey in the evening of New Year's Day. When the day arrived, the group started their trip as planned, traveling from Bangkok to the northeastern region of Thailand during the New Year season. As everyone knows, comes with heavily congested traffic. Adding to that, the mother-in-law and her friend were not very familiar with the route, as they had been living in Bangkok for many years. Tom decided to use the navigation app on his phone to guide the way. By around 8 to 9 p.m., the navigation app suggested a route that would supposedly save time. It instructed them to turn left in 500 meters. Considering how heavy the traffic was at that moment, Tom decided to follow the shortcut suggested by the app. After taking the turn onto the shortcut, Tom realized the road was extremely dark and isolated, with almost no vehicles in sight. He kept driving along the path until they reached a stretch of road that cut through 3 hills. There were no streetlights at all along this stretch. On the left side of the road, there was a mountain, while the right side was dense forest. Tom decided to switch to high beams to improve visibility. As they drove up the first hill, Tom glanced to his right and saw a child standing on the roadside. The child appeared to be about 6 or 7 years old. After driving past the spot, Tom felt uneasy, suddenly realizing that there were no houses or residences in the area. Where could that child have come from? He wondered. When they reached the second hill, Tom was shocked by what he saw. On the right side of the road, the same child stood in the same position as before. This time, as their car got closer, Tom saw the child running onto the road. But as the child reached the middle of the road, their figure vanished into thin air. The exact same phenomenon happened again when they drove past the third hill. It was as if they were watching the same scene replay 3 times. At that moment, Tom realized that what they had just encountered was certainly not human. Once they passed the mountainous area, the road became flat again. Tom tried to stay calm and decided to slow down for safety. They continued along the road, and gradually, Tom noticed more cars driving by. There were also streetlights lining the road, providing normal illumination. He started to feel more at ease. After a while, they entered a community area. This stretch of road had 2 lanes, and before long, they were stuck in traffic again. As the cars slowly inched forward, Tom noticed an accident up ahead in the middle of the road. From a distance, he could see a pickup truck blocking the way. As their car approached the scene, Tom saw a group of people standing around, likely locals who had come out to look at the accident. While glancing between the road ahead and the roadside, Tom's eyes were drawn to a man standing among the crowd. The man had short hair, wore a three-quarter sleeve striped shirt, and jeans. He was standing next to the driver's side of the pickup truck, so Tom got a clear view of him. What caught Tom's attention was the man's left temple, which appeared swollen and bruised. When Tom looked ahead to the accident scene, about 50 meters away, he realized it seemed to involve a pickup truck that had collided with a motorcycle. Out of curiosity, Tom tried to focus on the area where he suspected the injured person was lying. Suddenly, he was shocked by what he saw. The body of the injured man lying on the ground was the same man standing next to Tom's car earlier. Everything matched perfectly: his clothing, hairstyle, and even the swelling on the left temple. At that moment, Tom quickly glanced at the side mirror again, thinking that if it was a ghost or spirit, the man must have disappeared. But it turned out not to be the case at all. Tom could still see the man standing in the same spot, craning his neck to look at the accident ahead. Tom immediately warned everyone in the car, telling them to stay quiet and not mention anything, fearing that someone might make a comment about a death or something similar. Tom then drove past the scene and continued on the route. Eventually, the shortcut brought them to a road near Dan Kanthat, where they could transition to Chaiyapham province and then head toward Konkan province. Along the way, they planned to drop off the mother-in-law's friend. Following the GPS, Tom turned into a small alley where a market was located at the entrance. After driving for a while, Tom started to feel an eerie atmosphere, as though they were being haunted. The road they were on had very few streetlights, and the sides were lined with tall trees stretching endlessly along the way. Making matters worse, the mother-in-law's friend couldn't quite remember the route to her home, having lived in Bangkok for so long. This forced Tom to keep an eye on the road signs indicating village names while driving. Arguments arose in the car, with some questioning whether the GPS had taken them the wrong way since it felt like they'd been driving forever. Nevertheless, Tom decided to stick to the GPS directions. After driving for a while, Tom noticed something tall and massive standing by the left side of the road about 100 to 200 meters ahead. It was so tall that it towered above the treetops. At first, Tom thought it might be a large Buddha statue because the lower part of it appeared yellowish. However, as the car approached closer, revealing more details, Tom was shocked by what he saw. What he initially thought was a large Buddha statue turned out to be a giant, mysterious figure. It was a man with short black hair, fair skin, and a stout build, wearing a yellow short-sleeved shirt and knee-length shorts. The massive figure was standing astride a temple archway, gazing at their car. At that moment, Tom locked eyes with the giant figure. But in the split second that he looked away to focus on the road and glanced back, the figure had disappeared. Tom thought that the figure was likely a pret, a ghost from Buddhist folklore. However, Tom mentioned that every time he encountered these strange occurrences, he would always hear a mysterious male voice whispering in his ear to keep him grounded. This time, too, he heard a voice telling him, "It's not a pret. Keep driving." Shortly after passing through the temple gate, Tom glanced at the rice fields on the right side. There, he saw a man who appeared emaciated, as if he hadn't eaten for a long time, stumbling and crawling drunkenly through the dry rice stubble. The man seemed to be heading toward the front of their car. Tom snapped himself back to focus and accelerated to move away from the area quickly. Once he felt they had driven far enough, Tom, overwhelmed with unease, decided to share what he had seen with everyone in the car. He asked if anyone had seen the same things he had. However, their reactions suggested disbelief, as if they thought Tom's story was implausible. With that, Tom chose to concentrate on driving. After a short while, the GPS prompted them to turn left in 300 meters. When Tom reached the turn, he saw that it led to a road heading toward a temple in the area. Tom slowed the car hesitantly as the road stretched into a narrow lane flanked by dense forests. At that moment, Tom's mother-in-law spoke up, saying, "Don't go in there. It's too eerie." Lacking confidence in the GPS by this point, Tom decided to follow her advice and not take the left turn. He figured that if they didn't follow the GPS, it would eventually reroute them. Tom continued driving along the main road. The GPS recalculated and prompted another turn in 600 meters. This time, the road was even worse. It was a dirt path, flanked by an even denser forest than the previous route. Tom stopped the car and expanded the GPS map to look for alternative routes. After spending about 3 hours fumbling around following the GPS, they finally reached a T-junction. Turning right would lead them back to Chayafam, while turning left would take them to a village in the area. Given that they were heading to Concaine and had just come from Chayafam, turning right would mean going back the way they came. Tom decided to turn left and continue. The road they took after turning left seemed newly constructed, as there were no streetlights installed along the way. The eerie, unfamiliar atmosphere lingered as they pressed onward. They continued their journey for a while before deciding to stop at a gas station to use the restroom. The atmosphere at the station was quite eerie because it was poorly lit, giving off a gloomy and unsettling vibe. After parking the car, everyone got out to attend to their personal needs. While Tom was heading toward the restroom, he noticed statues placed in front of both the men's and women's restrooms. The statues gave him the eerie sensation of being watched. When Tom focused his gaze on the statues, he was startled to find that they seemed to be staring directly at him. He dismissed it as his imagination, likely influenced by the creepy experiences he'd had throughout the trip. However, as he walked past the statues, an inexplicable chill ran down his spine. After finishing in the restroom, Tom returned to the car and mentioned to everyone how the statues in front of the restrooms made him feel uneasy. To his surprise, his mother-in-law and her friend both admitted they felt the same. Without wasting any time, Tom quickly got everyone back in the car, and they resumed their journey. The road ahead was flanked by trees on both sides, and the darkness was nearly oppressive. With very few vehicles passing by, Tom had to rely on the high beams for most of the trip. After driving for a while, the car's headlights illuminated something unusual up ahead. Tom described it as a creature with a whitish body, resembling some kind of animal. Whenever their car got closer, the creature would leap behind the next tree along the roadside. Its movements were peculiar, hopping from one tree to the next, always staying ahead of the car. This strange hopping continued for some time. Suddenly, Tom saw the creature leap into a particular tree. As the car's headlights shone on the tree, the light caught a pair of strange eyes embedded in the trunk. The sight shocked Tom deeply. Instinctively, he reached for a necklace bearing the image of Luang Pu Thuot, a revered Buddhist monk, which was hanging from the rearview mirror. Clutching the necklace tightly, Tom silently prayed, asking Luang Pu Thuot to clear the path for him and his passengers. After releasing the necklace, the GPS on his phone unexpectedly recalculated the route. But what baffled Tom even more was that the GPS seemed to show that they had been driving in circles. They continued driving for about 24 kilometers when the GPS directed them to make a left turn. About 300 meters after taking the turn, Tom's mother-in-law remarked that the road looked oddly familiar, as if they had already passed that way before. This sparked another argument in the car. Tom insisted it was impossible because he remembered driving straight without any detours. Yet his mother-in-law kept pointing out landmarks that she recognized. To everyone's shock, they eventually found themselves back at the entrance to the temple, the same temple where Tom had earlier seen the giant man standing over the archway. The sight filled Tom with dread. He immediately asked his wife to remove the cardboard box that was covering the golden statue of Luang Pu Thuot on the dashboard. Tom had covered the statue to prevent its golden surface from fading in the sunlight. After his wife removed the box, Tom clasped his hands in prayer and once again asked Luang Pu Thuot for guidance. Miraculously, about 10 minutes later, they reached a three-way intersection, the same one they had encountered earlier when they first took the left turn. This time, everyone in the car looked pale and shaken, as they remembered how it had taken them 3 hours to get to the same intersection earlier. What confused Tom even more was that the sign at the intersection, which had previously indicated that turning right would lead back to Chayafam, now said that turning right would take them to the village where they were supposed to drop off his mother-in-law's friend. After making the right turn, Tom put his hands together in prayer again, apologizing to any spirits that might have been disturbed. He said, "I come in peace, not with ill intent. If there is anything bad following us, please return to where you came from." Once they successfully dropped off his mother-in-law's friend, Tom made another prayer as they drove away. But just as they were leaving the village, the entire area was suddenly plunged into darkness as the power went out. This strange occurrence left Tom wondering whether the ordeal was truly over or if it was just a series of coincidences. Tom slowly drove everyone out of the village in the pitch-black darkness, his mind racing with the thought of when these strange occurrences would finally end. As he drove, something peculiar caught his attention. The streetlights along the road would light up as their car passed each one. Once they drove past a light, it would immediately go out. It was as if the lights were guiding them out of the village, one by one. When Tom glanced at the clock, he realized it was already 4 a.m. He decided to find a roadside gas station to park and get some rest. After sleeping until 6 a.m., he resumed the journey with everyone. They eventually entered Kon Kaen province and continued toward Callison, the hometown of Tom's mother-in-law. While driving at around 80 kilometers per hour, Tom noticed two birds standing in the middle of the road ahead. Assuming that the birds would instinctively fly away as the car approached, he continued driving without slowing down. However, only one bird flew away, and the car struck the other bird with a loud thud that resonated inside the vehicle. Tom was deeply unsettled by the incident. After all the eerie experiences from the night before, his mind was filled with unease. Suddenly, He heard the mysterious voice of a man whispering in his ear, "It's over now. Someone else has taken your place." At last, they safely reached their destination. However, on the return trip, they needed to pick up Tom's mother-in-law's friend. Tom took the opportunity to revisit the temple gate where he had previously seen the giant man-like figure. When they arrived in the area during the afternoon, Tom noticed a male statue standing near the temple gate. He didn't know what the statue represented or why it was placed at the entrance of the temple, but the figure bore an uncanny resemblance to the giant man he had seen during their initial journey. After hearing Tom's account, it was clear that he had encountered strange and frightening experiences throughout the trip. It was fortunate that he and his passengers reached their destination safely. Personally, I'd like to leave a word of caution for everyone planning long-distance travel, especially during the New Year or any other occasion. Sometimes, taking shortcuts or alternative routes may not always be the best choice. Beyond the risk of encountering the supernatural, travelers might face poorly lit, isolated roads. Worse, if your car breaks down or you have an accident in such areas, and there's no phone signal, it can be difficult to get help quickly. It's always safer to stick to main roads. And if anyone reading or listening to this has ever had similarly strange encounters, feel free to share your experiences in the comments. Before we part ways today, don't forget to like and follow to support us in sharing more spine-chilling stories. And if you're someone who enjoys consuming haunting tales and eerie experiences, let us be part of bringing those thrills to you.